Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to Spilling the Tea, brought to you by Pekoe Mortgages. This is a podcast where we look to interview movers, shakers, hustlers, people that are inspiring, have inspiring stories, and help to push the envelope on what's possible. I am your host, Daniel Johannes, and I'm a mortgage broker, but I'm also a business owner. I've created multiple startups, including a graffiti removal business. I've done loose leaf tea, I've done kombucha, juice bars, you name it. So I've got some experience in this, and I'm looking forward to these conversations that I have. If you like it, please comment, subscribe, and share with your friends. Hope you enjoy it. Hey, welcome back, guys, to another episode of Spilling the Tea, a Pekoe podcast. And today I am joined by Michelle Jalsevac. Michelle is a sales representative over at Chestnut Park Real Estate Brokerage, and she's been there for the past 15 years. Michelle specializes in buying and selling luxury real estate homes and condos in Yorkville, Annex, Rosedale, and South Hill. And full disclosure, Michelle and we've had this conversation, but we had a little bit of technical difficulties. Michelle, thanks for joining me again.
Happy to be here again. Thank you.
Right on. And so, when we had our conversation, a lot of your story was pretty incredible. And I think you've got a really interesting story to share with everyone. So maybe let's back up and start over. So how did you get into real estate? What was the catalyst there and landing at Chestnut Park? Maybe walk us through it.
So took the courses out of interest. I did have a company called Miss Martini Inc., which was a martini catering company where I did events, parties all over the city, launching companies. It was at a time, over 25 years ago where websites were just starting out, and it was a great business, but mixology was not really a huge trend back then. It was really difficult to get people to understand the value in having custom martini bars or drinks, for
Mm,
example, at an event. And so it wasn't as lucrative given the amount of work that I was putting into it, although it was amazing experience, and just in terms of learning about business and managing people. So it was that was where I kind of figured, let's look into getting some other skills, and went to real estate school and met a girl on the first day of real estate school whose mother was a legend at Chestnut Park, and she was getting licensed. And when I mentioned Miss Martini as, my employment thus far, everybody kind of laughed in the classroom. And she said, "Oh, you've got to come work at Chestnut Park." So in a sense, I got recruited to come and work here, and it was probably one of the best moves I've ever made.
that's crazy. So, like, literally, as you're doing your classes, you're being recruited. And I think that speaks probably to your ability to hold a conversation with someone and get out of your comfort zone.
Mhm.
Miss Martini sounds like a lot of fun. And yeah, mixology is something, it's interesting because it kind of hit like a peak. Um, I would say maybe 10, 15 years ago. That's where it really started coming out. I saw tons of like mixology classes. They had like, there were a few events they would host downtown in the distillery where it was competitions.
Competitions. Yeah,
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 and
yeah.
that was like the big craze when I had my tea shop. We did a lot of cocktail workshops, and it was a lot of fun. But I agree with you; it could be difficult to sort of make a living out of that, especially
Mm.
when you're ahead of the curve. So you got recruited from Chestnut Park. You jumped on board, and did you start right away in luxury real estate? And I guess what was the most difficult part with shifting from doing Miss Martini over to real estate?
I think it was, I mean, all businesses are service oriented. So in that respect, it was really easy. I learned pretty quick from Miss Martini that you never say no to people. You say,
Mm,
yes, we can do that, but here's what it'll, here's what it's going to entail, or here's what it's going to cost. So I learned that part of the business and how to just service people, listen to them, and make them happy. And a lot of it was instinct and intuition, which I grew from my network of people and doing the events that I did all around the city. So it wasn't a difficult transition in that respect. However, I had a mentor for the first 6 years. I've actually been here now since 2006. So, yeah, it's been about 17 years now.
Oh, right on.
And yeah, and I worked with this mentor, and we really were just focused on specific areas and becoming an area expert. And I think that's where some realtors, when they're starting out, are they're kind of spreading themselves too thin or taking on listings because they're just trying to make ends meet, and they're working in areas that they're not familiar with. So I kind of stuck with the areas where my mentor worked, which is the area where I'm still continuing to work now, after all this time, and just more or less fell in love with the real estate. And that was where I wanted to put my name and brand behind luxury or very much quality real estate. And that's sort of where it led. And so it required me to turn down a lot of opportunities because if they weren't in the right area, or it wasn't an area that I was an expert in, even though I know the downtown pretty well, I had to realize that by doing that, I'd be taking away from focusing on the areas where I
Mm.
do want to work and spending the time there. So,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You can't kind of focus in many different places and be, as proficient as you'd like to be. I think this is incredibly important too, because some people, I was actually a victim of this, and my family member, that part of our family is a licensed real estate agent, but she's way outside of the city. So
mhm,
we actually years ago employed her to help us find a place, and quickly realized that she's a fantastic realtor for her market, but really you should be working with a local professional. So someone like you that is focused on luxury real estate in a pocket or a niche of the city. I mean, you're going to know
mhm.
that like no one else, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And yeah, so I think that's really important. The other
yeah.
thing is the importance of mentorship. So
Mhm,
we see this here in the mortgage brokering world, that some people that jump into this profession is very similar to real estate, I'd imagine, where if you don't have the proper mentorship, and especially if you're coming from a different industry where you don't have to manage your time, or you don't have, I guess, the option of managing your entire day, it can really get away from you, and it can be a struggle to do that. So yeah, I think that's really important. Have you done any mentorship yourself?
I have not. I'm always open to meeting with, I have definitely had a lot of lunches with people who are starting out or trying to figure out what they want to do. It is always, because I'm in a more of a niche market, it's sometimes hard to share that experience with people in a meaningful way because
Right.
but yeah, absolutely. I have done it, but not in any formal way.
Yeah, it
And but
takes a lot
it
of.
is very important. I mean, you're dealing
Yeah.
with people's number one asset. And I mean, the one thing about this, the market having been as strong as it has been through the pandemic, you just seen everyone and their uncle jumping into real estate because it's kind of like shooting fish in a barrel. um, I actually like these times when, things start to become a little uncertain, because this is when your experience becomes most important, and then people are turning to you because they realize that it's not that simple, and there's a lot of facets to having successful sale of property or purchasing something in a profitable way.
Yeah, and that's when you can really sort
Mhm,
of lean on your experience, right?
mhm,
Going through all
mhm,
of this, and separate sort of the maybe other agents that, and I've noticed this too. Like, last year it was crazy. You just put a sign out. You don't even have to put a sign out. You just have a listing and
yeah,
it's gone. Now it's a little
yeah,
different, where you really have
mhm,
to differentiate yourself. So why don't we talk?
mhm,
We talked yesterday a bit about sort of luxury real estate and condominiums, and sort of that sweet spot
mhm,
of, I think you said they start around 3 million or so, and there's a whole sort of because you do focus on condominiums too. There's a certain type of buyer that likes them. What's that
mhm.
buyer profile?
Yeah, so so we're looking at a demographic generally of people, and I sort of think of it more as when it comes to luxury condo, because they're not really downsizing. We use the term right sizing. So the demographic is probably people who are quite established in their career, in their homes, or maybe retired or empty nesters, but they've maybe lived in houses for most of their lives. Some are coming from condos, but generally the larger, higher end condos are people that are, looking at a different stage in their life where they're traveling a lot. They're not maybe working as much or can work from other places in the world. And they need a home in Toronto, but they want they still want the space, to put all the stuff that they've accumulated over the years. So they're quite well-heeled individuals who probably bought and sold real estate throughout their lives. But for many, moving into a luxury condo or a condo at all is a new thing. So while there's a lot of experience that they have in real estate, they don't necessarily have experience in condo living. So selling the luxury condo, it is a bit of a learning curve as well. It's almost like a first time home buyer. There's things that they have to understand and to make it work.
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned that the first time home buyer, and that's an interesting. I hadn't thought about it that way, but you really have to sort of treat them as if they're first time buyers in the market, because this could be a completely different way of living, and there could be some things that they're like, well, hold on a second, what are these fees that I have to pay every month? What are they going to? Am I, if I had a house, I wouldn't have to pay these. But then you also brought up, well, you don't have to worry because you've got 24-hour concierge, you have all of these amenities, you don't have to worry about the leaky roof, things like
Yes.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yeah. People do actually, they don't love, nobody likes paying maintenance fees. They
mm,
hate it. They really have trouble wrapping their heads around the value in that. But if you think about, and especially when I'm dealing with maybe a higher net worth individual and they're buying a condo and they're kind of going, but what about these fees? Nobody got wealthy by throwing money away either. So
that's
there
true.
really is this need to explain, and I find, especially in luxury, because the deals that I do are fewer and far between, I have to be way more educated than my clients are. And people today are very educated because there's so much information out there. But really, what I'm doing for them is I'm saving them time, and I'm, sifting through all of that information and getting them the info that's valuable and finding them the right deals so they're not running around wasting time and money and energy.
Yeah.
So that is a big part of it. But yeah, they with maintenance fees, I as I said, it's you know yeah, sure, you have a house, but you've got to drag your garbage bins out to the sidewalk every week. And when you're away, that's collecting.
Right.
The city of
Shovel that
Toronto now is
sidewalk.
I know, but the city of
Yeah.
Toronto now is cleaning the sidewalks for us.
Oh, are they?
Yes, they passed and they actually do it. They come around now and clean the sidewalks.
Wow,
So
maybe
that
it's
was a
time to
nice
move
little
back.
bonus I researched at the city. Yeah, I looked it up and I was like, oh, that just was implemented this year. So they're actually doing our sidewalks. But
Wow.
there's still ice buildup and all of this stuff that happens. And while you're away, you're the security of not having your home, locked down, or, there's all of these maintenance things that you have to worry about, and it's the time and energy, not just the money, uh, to do that, like getting your windows clean, getting your eavesdrops
Hmm.
sorted. Those It's not just the cost associated with that, it's the time and energy and the concern, where when condo living takes all of that away, so the maintenance fees are covering all of that for you. If the roof needs to be replaced, that's going to be covered in that reserve fund and in those maintenance fees.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I mean, there's something to be said because for me, uh, I had moved from a house to condo living, high rise living, and I had I guess I was fortunate enough to live in many different areas within downtown Toronto, and very quickly you realize that even though you're paying every month, there are a lot of things you don't have to deal with, and then there's also the added benefits of gym, swimming. We talked about this earlier, where I absolutely love that we had an off-leash park, because you and I are both dog lovers, and it's great, especially in the middle of winter, where you can just go down to a heated area, let the dogs run, and have fun with that. And yeah, so
Yeah.
there's certain things there where you can, definitely justify
Hmm.
the cost, but I think that really is important to be able to explain to people that
Yeah.
haven't had to deal with condominium fees before,
And
what
some
really
some luxury buildings now too are, I mean, obviously there's valet and concierge, which a lot of a
right.
high end buyer, this demographic, they do have usually homes elsewhere, so they'll have a place somewhere hot and maybe a place in Caledon, or a little bit
Hmm.
outside the city, somewhere to ski in the winter, maybe Collingwood. So they've usually got other homes, so that just the ease of knowing the valet is there, the concierge is in the building. So these types of amenities to the building, they cost money, and so that's where there'll be a bit of a premium, but that's the lifestyle choice. And then the other rub is that uh, a high-end luxury condo buyer generally wants a real prime location, and they
Hmm.
want large size suites, but they don't want a high rise with 400 units in it, with smaller.
Mostly
They don't want to
renters.
be.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I've had many people turn away from projects from a condo purchase because they're like, oh, I don't like the fact that there's 10 suites on the floor.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
which in many buildings, 10 suites on the floor that's not an insane number. But
Yeah.
for a luxury buyer, they're looking for more of a boutique or a smaller feel, a lower rise building with larger suites and like-minded people, like a community. So,
Right.
that's a developer has to be able to negotiate all of that, with their plans with the city, and the neighborhood that they're going to be in. That all costs money. So there's going to be always premiums on these types of environments, and they're quite few and far between, because most developers go, I'd rather just throw a tower up somewhere, or two towers, where I can get 600 suites and they're all small, and bang them out and it's some of the parts. A luxury building in a great location, they're difficult to come by. So if you can get them and get the larger sizes, they're fairly rare. And yeah, there's a premium associated with that. Mhm.
Do you find that the turnover on these, Michelle, is a lot less too? So if someone buys it, they're typically holding on a little bit longer?
It can be, but people's lives always change.
Right.
So that's
Yeah.
one thing we know for sure, is it's hard to guarantee. There still is turnover. I find kind of with people who are quite wealthy, sometimes the real estate is the fun sort of change in their life. So sometimes they just want a change of atmosphere, or they want
Right.
a different view, or and they can sort
Go
of make
shopping
that
again,
change.
and
Go
yeah,
shopping
yeah, yeah.
again. Yeah, yeah. And
That makes a
relationships
lot.
change too, right? So
Mm,
sometimes you'll find that they thought they were going to be with someone forever and they're not, and so they're again going through another transition in their life because of a relationship change.
right. Um, that's a good point, and probably a lot of your buyers and sellers, they typically aren't dealing with having to go finance anything because they've got the means to do that. But if they were, we see this a
Right.
lot on our sides, where there could be a matrimonial breakdown, and that's something to take into consideration. If the primary residence needs to be sold, what are those break
Yeah.
penalties, and what are the costs involved with that? But yeah,
Mhm.
that's a good point too, that's something to be aware of. All right,
Yeah.
so let's
That's
shift gears. Sorry, go on.
yeah, an interesting topic too, is I do deal with a lot of the divorce, which is
Ah,
never,
okay.
I mean, it's never fun.
Right.
And that's an interesting concept too, because yes, you're usually getting maybe a large home, and all of a sudden the assets are getting kind of split in half, let's say,
Mm,
in the usual scenario. That's sort of how it goes. And in that situation, I usually always say, even rent for a bit, just to figure out. Don't feel like you have to rush into buying something else right
right, right.
away. Like, rent for a bit and figure it out. So I work a lot with people in that scenario. I've been through it myself, and it's a big one, and it's a big one, even especially for luxury buyers, because a lot of times if you get a family where they have kids, or may even have older kids, they want both both houses, once they're now separate, to have rooms for the kids who
For
will
the
come
kids,
and
yeah.
go. And a lot of times, if you've got one or both parents who are professionals and are working a lot, like they don't have time necessarily to do the yard work and this and that. So they might have to get used to a condo lifestyle just because it's going to suit their immediate needs too. So,
That's a
and
good point.
again, it doesn't hurt to rent and figure out what you
No,
want and
because
where
that's
you want to
giving you
be.
that time. Exactly. And
Yes.
with so much, so many changes that happen, especially if you've got a family that's now the the new normal is going to be two houses and moving those kids back and forth. You definitely want to make sure that you've kind of sorted everything out, even from a legal perspective. And we all
Yeah.
know that type of whenever there's a breakdown, it can be a little nasty sometimes. Do you ever find that you're in the middle of that? Like when if you're representing, let's say, clients that were together for a long time, and then something like this
Yeah.
happens, are you playing more therapist?
I've actually never been in the middle of an acrimonious divorce.
Mm,
I've usually been called from people one partner or the other. So I'm really just dealing with the one partner. But I do find I am usually able to give pretty good advice about how to interact with the other partner and their respective agent. Because usually I find that's what happens. They're not going to have me representing both sides. Like it just doesn't work.
yeah,
But
yeah, no,
yeah, so but I can see it from both perspectives, and I generally can give good advice on how to just manage it to the best. And within the law is the law. I mean, there's not a lot of arguing you can do about how these things are split up. That's not my job. My job
right,
is to
yeah,
sell the real estate, get the
yeah,
best deal possible, or help them find a new home that's going to suit their new lifestyle.
yeah. That makes a
Mhm.
lot of sense. So with obviously the market's shifted from last year to today. It's shifted, and you and I just talked about this before we went live too. Even today, we're seeing a lot more uncertainty and turmoil with
Mhm.
the banks and where things are going. And it looks like Credit Suisse is on the ropes, and we may see other banks start to falter, which obviously is going to have effect on real estate. What had up until today? What have you seen as far as demand, supply, and where do you think things are going?
Supply is still, we are still in a critical lack of it.
Mm,
So, and it just seems like every time the government intervenes, it doesn't really do what they hope it's going to do. And, I think we really need to start, I think in the lower range real estate, we really need to start facilitating affordability, whatever, however that has to happen. And we definitely need to be facilitating more housing starts because given the number of immigrants that we have coming into Toronto, like to Ontario, I should say, coming into Canada, never mind, I think something like
yeah,
70% of them come into Ontario and 50% come to Toronto. So, we need to be managing that. And I mean, pre-COVID, there weren't nearly enough housing starts. I think there was something like 50,000, and we need something like 150,000 per year to be, to manage what's coming in. And
yeah. We're not close to
and
it.
that I think it's so difficult. I think when legislation is being made, we need to be facilitating builders getting their plans through, developers getting their plans through, making it easier for them to execute. Otherwise, we're going to continue to be stuck with this huge lack of supply and
Yeah.
no affordability.
Well, that's exactly it, right? Because everyone needs a place to
Mhm.
live. And typically, what we've noticed is a lot of immigrants that come into Canada, they have a tendency, they want to buy, they want to own the place they're living in. So there is definitely a push to kind of get into the real estate market. But if there's not enough supply there, and, well, you know better than I do because you're living downtown Toronto, I mean, rents are kind of insane. they're through the
True.
roof. So
Hmm.
people need places to live, and the housing starts just simply aren't there. I think the problem is, and I had interviewed Cam Guthrie over, he's the mayor of Guelph, and we were talking about affordability in his city. And one of the big issues is housing starts, obviously, but then also skilled labor. They just don't have enough people to help on the construction sites in order
Hmm.
to make these numbers. And he said it's all been downloaded on a municipal level, and it's unfortunately, it seems like everyone's kind of passing the buck in government and just being like, okay, well, we have this target we need to achieve now. Everyone else figure out how to do it. And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I don't
I
know if
think it's
that's
kind of
gonna.
a sign of the time too, in terms of skilled laborers. Yeah, because the focus has really been taken off that. We're living in an internet generation,
It's true. Can't build a house
and
online yet.
yeah, you can't build a house online. And interestingly enough, a lot of those online companies like Purple Bricks, they've
Mm,
gone
they
they've
have,
gone
yeah.
bust. Yeah, a lot of these companies didn't work because at the end of the day, you still physically need people to look at these properties. They're not going to just buy it,
Sight unseen.
online. And so,
Yeah,
although
yeah,
these tools are helpful, we you definitely need more people realizing that it's still hands on. And I guess the same goes for trades. Like we still need people to actually do the hands on work to make,
yeah.
you
They,
know,
yeah. That's exactly it. And if they're not,
yeah.
if there aren't enough skilled labor, if there isn't a large enough skilled labor force to deal with this, then yeah, we're back at sort of ground zero with this. So
Yeah.
it's definitely going to be interesting. What are your predictions? I know
In
probably a lot
terms
of
of,
your.
well, in my market, because again, because I'm so niche and in like a specific locale,
Yeah.
like the people that buy and sell in these neighborhoods where I work are generally local. So they're people that are
Mm,
actually probably coming from larger homes in the surrounding areas. So, and some of them are affluent areas like Rosedale. They might even want to just move a little bit closer to Young, to where like the South Hill corridor, so between St.
right.
Clair and Bloor. And so you'll find that they're either going to look for a condo or maybe even a smaller home. I actually happen to live in, I live in a smaller detached home close to the Young corridor south of St. Clair. And all of my neighbors, a lot of them have come from larger homes in Rosedale. And this is sort of their right sizing if they're not quite ready to go into a condo. And it's not necessarily that people aren't ready to go into condos. We have not had luxury condo supply in the size ranges that these buyers want and need. There's been now an influx of developments that are happening between St. Clair and Bloor on Young. They're intensifying it a lot more, and you're seeing luxury buildings go up. And actually, the plan in this neighborhood is that there will be some of the most um, expensive uh, condo real estate in the city will start to happen up and down this corridor, because I think with Yorkville is becoming so saturated too. There's so much construction
Mm,
going on there. This is now another little pocket that is really kind of waking up. I think it's been a little bit of a sleeper for a while, and I think it'll be Toronto's next kind of affluent luxury condo neighborhood, because it really is about people wanting that exclusivity, that community feel, and the lifestyle of being able to walk out your door and having lots of shops and little
mm,
restaurants and sports clubs and tennis clubs. And that's what this area gives you, and also some beautiful parks and gorgeous ravine trails. And we had sort of talked about this earlier, you and I, about that Toronto has some of the most beautiful forested ravine and bike trails and extensive uh, bike trails in North America. And a lot of
you
people
don't
that
even
live here
realize it, and it's
don't
yeah, it's
realize it.
exactly, yeah, it's right in. When I lived there, I didn't realize for a long time it was literally right in the backyard there,
Yeah.
and I would always run that trail. I forget the name of the trail, but it's literally, where the evergreen brickworks. You would pop out around
Mm-hmm.
a
There's the
trail there.
Beltline. There's a Beltline Trail.
Yeah,
Yeah, they kind of trade names as you go through.
yeah,
It's
yeah, but it's so
yeah,
beautiful. It's
but
gorgeous
they're
around
the
there, and to
Rosedale. It's the Rosedale Ravine. It goes. You can go to the
right, yeah,
brickworks. Like from where I am here at Yonge and St. Clair, um, you can walk into the ravine and you can walk all the way to the brickworks. And I think you cross one little uh, Pottery Road. You cross a little road there,
Right.
but the
Yep.
rest is completely forested, and you wouldn't think you were in the city. And that's a
That's crazy.
huge benefit to these neighborhoods that, you know, I always stress whenever I'm introducing someone to the neighborhood, or, like, this is what the lifestyle affords you. So you can live in a condo and you can hop on your bike and you can go for an hour and a 2 hour bike ride in forested trails from here, and be home in time for, coffee at 9 if you want. Like, it's just,
That's
um,
crazy.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad that those amenities are there and available and accessible to everyone.
Mhm, mhm.
So yeah, definitely worth checking out. I got another question for you before we kind of wrap things up here. But have you ever had a client that you've worked with that has bought a place sight unseen or hasn't seen it and was just like, ah, these pictures look good. Let's just buy
I
it.
have. I
Have you
have.
really?
Yeah, I
Wow.
have. It was, actually, I find that happens in Rosedale a lot, because
Mhm.
Rosedale has a historic bylaw. So Rosedale wide, there is a bylaw that says you can't change the look of those homes. So it's
Mm. I
just
think
a
The
historic kind of,
Kingsway's like that too, isn't
is
it?
it?
Or certain
Yeah.
areas? Yeah,
Yeah,
the Tudor
that's
style homes, there's certain, yeah,
I'm sure.
provisions
So
there.
yeah, they have a heritage bylaw. So
Right.
that's
Okay.
what happens in Rosedale. So sometimes, if someone really wants a particular house in Rosedale, what it looks like in the inside is not so important to them. It's the lot size, the location, and the look of the house on the outside, and then you kind of know what you're getting, and there's only so much you can do with the
Outside. Yeah.
property.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they can go in and, with deep pockets, renovate the whole interior to however they want. But yeah, I had two doctors who were, um, which was sort of an interesting story, because it was sight unseen with the one partner. It was a big house in Rosedale on a great street, and one of them showed up and he said, we're expecting a baby." And he said, and my partner's a doctor, and we're expecting our second child, sorry. And he said, but my partner's unable to make it to the showing. And so they did go ahead and buy the house without the partner having seen it. And then I discovered later that the partner was a male, and they had a surrogate who was having their child. So I thought, I was kind of, my mind went to, okay, his wife is pregnant, not
Yeah. Yeah.
realizing
Yeah.
this is very much a modern family, and I
I was
shouldn't
gonna
jump to
say,
conclusions.
yeah.
I was thinking, okay, she must be sort of really quite pregnant and can't make it to the house to have a look. But now, oh, sorry, I just dropped my earphone.
It's a good thing you didn't you weren't like, hey,
Yeah,
send her my best or whatever.
I didn't make the assumption, but it was when I discovered that it wasn't a matter of the partner being pregnant and not being able to make it. It was just a really busy schedule. It was kind of fun, and yeah,
That's
I
funny.
believe they still actually live in that house, which is great.
Oh, right on. That is awesome.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, it's something I haven't really heard of that happening in sort of where our airspace where we fly, but it's interesting to kind of
yeah,
see what happens in those areas. I'd love to
yeah,
have you back at some point, Michelle, so we can chat a little bit on
yeah.
how 2023 is starting to unfold for luxury real
Mhm.
estate over there. But I wanted to thank you again for taking the time to meet with me. And if
Okay,
anyone wants to reach Michelle, I'm going to leave her contact information below and her social media. So
great,
you can be a fly on the wall with all the luxury real estate that's going on. Thanks again,
awesome.
Michelle,
Thank you
for
so
joining me.
much. Yeah, I
No problem.
appreciate it.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye.